So hello there, this is the third webinar in the series of 4 webinars in the series How Best to Develop Your Marketing Career in 2021. I'm Neil Wilkins. So thank you again for coming along this afternoon to this. If this is your third webinar in this series, then welcome back. It's great to see you back again. If this is your first one, you can play catch up with the previous 2 in the series. These have been going really well. We've had a lot of people coming along, a lot of great feedback. This clearly is a very pertinent topic for everybody right here, right now, as we come out of the other side of what's been pretty chaotic times, whatever industry you're in, whichever sector you're in. So this is number 3 in the series of 4. We've already looked at some of the key marketing skills and communication skills and basically professional business skills that you need right here, right now. And in webinar 2, we looked at weaving those together into a really powerful and engaging CV. Not only if you're looking actually for employment right now, but to be something that's really important to have in your portfolio and as a portfolio at any point in your career. This is now moving into the real kind of personal side of things, which is the marketing of your personal brand. And we're going to be talking a lot as we go through this session about the importance of really recognizing that you have a personal brand, whether you like it or not. And I'll cover lots more information about that in just a short while. Then in webinar 4, which is on the 12th of April, and you can book ahead, and I would recommend booking early for these because they do tend to become very popular. Webinar 4 on the 12th of April is the personal branding on LinkedIn. Now, this is a very hot topic because LinkedIn is very much the place to be online right now for both your personal and commercial development. So if you're looking to forge ahead in your career and come out the other side of the global pandemic in a really positive fashion, then LinkedIn is definitely one of the key places that you need to be. So that's on the 12th of April. So head over to marketingcollege.com/events to book onto that session, and certainly recommend you do that sooner rather than later. So as I say, welcome back if this is your third one in the series. Great to see you again. And this really is kind of building into a set, if you like, of tools and resources and ways of thinking to help you develop your career over the coming months and years. So today's session is very much around the topic of your personal brand. And what is a personal brand? Well, this is basically called reputation. And a lot of us, if we're in a marketing, communications or business role, we represent an organization. It might be our own business, or we could represent somebody else's business. And what we're doing here is we're looking to build a reputation, positive reputation, that helps our target audiences, and they probably are many and varied, to understand who we are and the value we bring to them. Now, that's kind of how we do it in a business sense. And there are a lot of similarities and a lot of parallels that we can draw when it comes to your own personal brand. So what is a personal brand? Well, this is, in essence, it's the things that people say about you, the topics that people remember you for, the things that you're advocated for when you're not there. So what is it that you leave behind when you have any kind of encounter with somebody, be it online or be it face-to-face? Whatever it is that you leave behind with them in their thoughts, in their minds, in their memories, that is your personal brand. It's not what you're doing right here, right now. It's the stuff that you leave them with. Now that gets quite interesting when you think of it in that way, because it's very different to the how do I dress, what do I say, what kind of messages am I sharing. This becomes something that's really about outcomes. This is, well, what kind of things am I leaving that are important things for the people I'm trying to communicate with? That's the key. That is your personal brand. It's the stuff that sticks. And so, of course, if we start thinking of it in that way, then it becomes very clear, very quickly, that you already have one, because you have not just been born this morning, you've been around for some time. That could be years, decades, many decades in some cases, if you're like me. So you already have a personal brand, whether you like it or not. Now, if you are one of these people, I'm not here to judge, by the way, at all in any shape or form, but if you're one of these people who kind of doesn't believe that and would much rather put their head in the sand like an ostrich and hope everything goes away and that, you know, you're not noticed, well, unfortunately, I've got news for you. You already have a personal brand, whether you like it or not. This is something that's not going to go away. You are already leaving an impact, and that could be an impact that is positive, or it could be an impact that you could improve. This might be an impact that you have planned and you've choreographed and you've kind of prepared in advance. So you're monitoring actually the impact against something else, much as you would if you launch a product or a service in your business. So you can see already we're seeing some similarities here. But the key thing to know is that you already have a personal brand. Now, what that personal brand is a whole different story, and that's going to be the topic of this webinar today. So we just need to recognize that, you know, we're already leaving an impact, we're already leaving an impression in every single encounter that we have online and in person. So what can we do about it then? So if we already have some kind of impact and some kind of sort of essence, if you like, in other people's minds, what actually is that going to be? Well, the very, very first starting point, I would say, when you're actually defining how do you come across to others, is to Google yourself. You know, just have a look and see how you are already coming across. Now, if this isn't something that you have actually planned or plotted to this point, you might find this is quite interesting, because if you have any kind of presence, either in social media, or you maybe have shared a blog now and again, or maybe you've got your own personal website, or maybe you've got some leisure interests in which you've appeared online, or you've been at an event or a conference and you maybe have spoken at that conference. If you've done anything at all where there is any kind of digital footprint with you, then you will almost certainly appear in one or many search engines. So Google, for me, is the first sort of starting point to just kind of figure out, well, how am I looking to the world right now? Now, of course, in a real world sense, you can go away and ask your colleagues and your line manager and your family and your friends, kind of, how do I come across to you? You know, if I was a brand, if I was like a product that you could go and buy, what would I be like? And you can actually ask people in a physical sense, kind of, what's going on? What are you? Who are you? So from a digital perspective, there's a lot of research you can do. Clearly, you can look up on a search engine and kind of see from a text-based perspective, kind of, well, where do I appear? Which websites do I appear in? Am I on social in any particular places? Oh, look, there's me. Certainly, when you look at images, that's always an interesting one, because, you know, you don't have a unique name. It's very, very unlikely you have a name that nobody else on this planet has. So therefore, you will be in a mix along with other people who share your name. And that in itself is quite a profound exercise, to go away and actually look and see, oh my goodness, there's all these different people there. They've all got the same name as me. So who is that? Who is this? And you hopefully will see some sort of presence where you're actually figuring in that mix as well. Now, if you do, how do you appear? What kinds of things or what kinds of messages are you leaving here in your digital footprint for others to see? Now, if this is something that, a little bit like me, you've kind of been looking at for some time, you will see yourself in quite a number of different places. You'll see yourself in places where you consciously went in and put yourself in a particular position so that you could be easily found. And in other times, you're probably going to be surprising yourself, where you think, oh my goodness, I don't remember all that time ago, look, when I was at that particular event, or, oh, look, there's me in that group of people, and it just happens to have my name tagged. So you've got to do your research. You've got to find where your brand is right now. And certainly from a digital sense, you might find that you're actually quite surprised. So the first thing that you need to do, obviously, is go and sort of figure out what's your starting point. And also then when you start to build upon that and sort of think, well, okay, there's me, and it might only be one or two images, maybe one or two mentions, or it could be a whole host of pages of mentions and images. You've then got to just sort of decide, okay, so is the brand that I'm conveying there, is that really me? So does it give the right kind of tone of voice and style? Again, very, very similar to if you were marketing a product or a service, or, on behalf of your organization, what is your organization's brand? Is this authentic and true? Is it really you? Can you live and breathe this thing? We'll look at this in a little while. But the whole essence really of the tone of voice and style is really important. Do you like what you see? Does it resonate with who you are or who you wish to convey as a person in your personal brand? Because if you find there's some kind of divergence away from actually where you'd like to be, then there is definitely work to be done. If what you see doesn't really feel like you, or there's some level of embarrassment over what you see, then there is work to be done. This is a never-ending journey. Once you recognize that you have this brand, whether you like it or not, you have to do something about it. Now, you can make the conscious choice. I'm not going to do anything about it. I'm just going to see what happens. But at least then you've made a choice. If by being aware that you have this personal brand, you see something and you think, that doesn't really convey who I am, it's not the right tone of voice and style, I need to do something about it, then you're on that journey. And if you then make the choice of, right, okay, now I've got a direction, I've got a place I want to get this to, then you're on a journey. So we're all coming at this from very different perspectives and different starting points, but the real essence is really embracing this thing, embracing this personal brand, and ideally getting to a place where you can live and breathe whatever you decide this personal essence of you is going to be, to put towards, put out there to the rest of the world. You've got to be able to live and breathe this thing every moment of every day. Now, what I'm meaning by this is we often encounter people who have created this persona, I guess you could call it, particularly online and particularly in social, where when you meet them in person, you think, wasn't really expecting that, or you're very different in person. You didn't look the same, you didn't sound the same. And in fact, actually, I'm either very impressed or potentially I'm very disappointed about what I see. And we're all doing this all the time. Every time we have an encounter, we're making both conscious and subconscious judgments of the people we encounter. These could be people familiar to us, or they could be complete strangers who are going to be part of our network or our community going forward. So we're constantly having to revise and be very aware of how we're coming across, because people will be judging. We do, we're human beings. Now, of course, if you've already begun setting up social media accounts, particularly where, with obviously the plethora of different filters that we have available to us these days, you can almost create a sort of a second life, really, if you like, and networks like that are available. But we can actually be kind of whoever we want to be. But I'm going to ask you the question as to whether or not, from a professional sense, you'd be comfortable being found in that other alternate ego, if you like, that alternate person or style of you. There is no right or wrong. As I said right at the start, I'm not here to judge and give you one single way of approaching this. What I'm doing is just introducing you to the idea that there might be a more effective way of doing it. There might be a slight tuning or a slight alignment of how you're coming across right now. But just being aware that you're conveying a tone of voice and a style in every communication that you do, much as I'm doing right here, right now. I'm conveying a tone of voice, I'm conveying a style. Whether or not you pick it up in the way that I'm intending it is another matter, but it's happening whether we like it or not. So think about your social media accounts. Think about how you've positioned your profile picture. Think about the biography. Think everything from Snapchat through to LinkedIn and everything in between. How are you positioning yourself? Is it the right tone of voice and style right here, right now? This isn't what I'm going to do about it. We'll come to that. This is, how do I come across right now? Have I been thinking about this? Have I been conscious about what I'm leaving behind for the people who encounter me? Am I comfortable with it? Is it the right kind of personal branding that I want to be conveying, that I want to be sharing? These are really important, profound questions that we need to offer up. And am I being authentic and transparent? What we're trying to do here is to create a level And it doesn't have to be off the scale, but we're all on a spectrum of what I might term professional extroversion. Okay, so introverts and extroverts. Introverts at one end of the scale are people and individuals who gain energy from spending time alone. Extroverts on the other end of the spectrum are people who gain energy from being around others. Having sort of other people's energy around them actually fuels them. From a personal branding perspective, we're trying to move ourselves towards a level of professional extroversion. In other words, recognizing that this personal brand will gain energy in itself if we can choreograph it, if we can manipulate it, if we can shape it to something that's both comfortable for us to live and breathe authentically and transparently every day, but that actually provides energy and inspiration and motivation and engagement to those we encounter and to those who encounter us. So a level of professional extroversion is really important. Again, I've said you've got an option here. You can bury your head in the sand and pretend this will all go away. It won't, but you can pretend that if you want to. But if you want to embrace this and kind of recognize that if you're willing to do the hard yards and actually set this up and really try and create a journey here and an evolution from where you are today to some point in the future, and we'll look at that in a moment. If you're willing to do that, there is a good potential energy that you can start to glean, and it will come in your direction as well. This isn't just about you giving and doing all the work. It will come back to you because it will reflect back to you the effort that you put in going outwards. So it's a really interesting little balance that we're trying to strike here. At the same time as recognizing that all of us have some level of privacy that we wish to maintain. Okay, so when we talk about professional extroversion and kind of putting out there the right kinds of messages, the right kind of images, saying the right kind of things in the right tone of voice, we do probably, most of us, want to retain some level of personal privacy. So it's worth just thinking this through, and it's worth figuring out, what do if I want to become professionally extrovert, so I want to be out there saying the right things, adding great value, what do I want to retain just for me? Now, wherever you are on this spectrum of introvert to extrovert is going to affect and kind of really control how much personal privacy you want. If you're more introverted, so you like to protect that kind of internal energy and not share too much or be selective about what you share, then that is absolutely fine. I would put myself personally in that category. I am very selective over what I share. I'm hugely extrovert, or I'm trying to be hugely extrovert professionally, but actually personally, I am very introverted. So I've got to strike a careful balance between those two things. So plot out the things that from a personal brand perspective, you want to keep private and you want to keep personal. And then plot out those things that you're very happy to share professionally because they're going to add value to the world around you. Having those two things nicely balanced so that you can feel comfortable with what we're talking about here is a really important step to giving you the confidence that you're going to be doing your personal brand in the right way for you, that you're not going to cannibalize that lovely personal time that you want to be protecting, but at the same time, you're not keeping that all to yourself when the world could also benefit from it. So this is about striking the balance. It's really important to remember all of these things are on a spectrum, and you can slide the slider in either direction, positively or negatively, to a point on each of these things that is comfortable for you. And a lot of the time we see a lot of the great sort of thinkers in this kind of whole personal branding and sort of entrepreneurial kind of field particularly are great advocates of documenting this journey. In other words, actually using this thought process and actually taking this thought process online. For those of you who've encountered Gary Vaynerchuk, he is a great advocate and has been for many, many years about documenting your journey. And the documentation of your journey from that quiet, introverted professional into being somebody who's sharing great high value stuff with the world and getting great interactions and actually, positioning yourself as a voice of authority or thought leadership he talks about documenting your journey from that starting point to your goal as being very, very important, both for you personally and for you monitoring that journey that you're on, but as well as your audience going forward as well, because they are curious and fascinated by that journey that you're on. Now, whether you believe that or not, there is so much research and so much evidence that says that is true. So it's, again, important for you to think about, well, what am I willing to share? And I'm going to share a couple of little things a little bit later with you. From my perspective, the things that I'm now sharing in terms of documenting my journey from an entity that I was before into something that I'm creating going forward. But again, with authenticity and transparency. We're not creating a falsehood here. We're creating something that needs to resonate with us personally and fit very comfortably in our everyday world. And with that in mind, the next question is, are you playing to your strengths? So are you playing to what we might call your competencies, the things that kind of set you aside from everybody else around you, the things that you're just that little bit better at or a little bit more comfortable doing or comfortable offering? Now, these can be big things. You know, if you're very, very successful or very, very good at doing a particular thing, this might be a big, significant competency. If it's just a little thing, that is also hugely valuable, because there might be the little thing that adds that huge value. It might seem insignificant, but everybody wants it, or everybody's valuing it, or everybody's getting great value from it. So don't worry about the scale and size of these things. Just think, what am I really competent at? What am I just better or more stronger at? Or are there things around the way that I do stuff, the way that I communicate, the way that I position myself, the stuff I do for work colleagues, the way that I interact with the world? Are there things that people just say, oh yeah, thank you for doing it that way, or thanks for giving me that, because that was hugely valuable? And you probably wouldn't hear other people getting that feedback. One of the really nice analogies that I heard, and this isn't an original Neil Wilkins thing, this was something one of my students quite a few years ago sort of came up with actually in one of the workshops. And she said, I've actually heard this really good story about the difference between capabilities and competencies. And I said, go on, so share it with us. And she said, well, capabilities are things you can do, and competencies are things that you do better than anybody else. And she said, the analogy that I just heard, and she said, I was reading, I think it was she was reading some textbook or sort of philosophical document or something. And she said the author had written this really nice analogy, which was based around the decathlon in athletics. And she said, everybody can do the 10 events, but the competency is what you are going to, the one event that you're going to actually win at out of those 10 events when you're up against all the other athletes. And I thought that was a really nice way of putting it. You know, we've all got capabilities, but those one or two little things that we know we're going to win at, those are our competencies. So by focusing and playing to our strengths, and then maybe getting others around us who can infill those capabilities where maybe we're not quite so strong, might not be a weakness, but we might just be quite so strong. That is totally fine. Let's focus on our competencies, because probably those are the things within our personal brand that we're going to be able to share probably more powerfully and more comfortably with the rest of the world. And if you're playing to your strengths, what you start to see, and what you start to see emerge when you go through this exercise of figuring out what your competencies are, if you haven't been through this, is you start to uncover, if you like, maybe topics or areas where you might be able to take what we call thought leadership. This is a really, really powerful way of creating a personal brand, thinking about things that you can lead the conversation in. So things that you become expert at or specialist in, things that not necessarily you're going to become world-class in, because we don't need to be world-class to be a thought leader. We just have to have some kind of level of influence to the story or influence to the topic. So for me, as you see a little bit later, I'm currently sort of working on this, you know, personally for myself, around the whole topic of mindful marketing. And by mindful marketing, I'm talking about bringing the environment and sustainability and sort of ecology into the marketing mix. So for me, that's kind of where I'm sort of really focusing. And occasionally I'll have a little light bulb moment or a little time of inspiration, and I'll do a blog, and it'll be like, oh, I think actually that might be kind of thought leadership, maybe with a lowercase t and a lowercase l. It really doesn't matter, but it's part of adding value to a topic. So as you start to play to your strengths, identifying things where there could be little topics you've got a view on, or you might want to review something on that topic or that subject, and then you share it. That becomes part of the personal brand going forward. So again, this is about reflection on the things that you're good at, the things that you're probably better than a lot of other people at, and starting to build on those and seeing if you can identify things like thought leadership. Now, if there aren't any topics that come up in your sort of mind dumping and sort of working through that question, then a lot of the time it could be about the way that you do things, not actually what you do, but the way that you do it. Napoleon Hill, one of the great thinkers of the early 20th century, has talked a lot about adding value through giving service to others without expectation of a return. Now, this can be a huge strength. If you're the kind of person who really genuinely and openly and authentically doesn't mind doing stuff for others without any expectation of getting something back in return, either payment or a favor or anything like that, then that can add a huge amount of value to the level of personal brand that you're creating. You become identified as that go-to person if you need help with a particular subject or topic or particular exercise. Giving service without expectation is a huge underpinning element, if you like, or foundation for a strong personal brand. Most people in this world are looking to get something from the world. They're looking to get something from others. They'll only do things. They'll only spend time. They'll only give work, effort, if they're going to get some kind of return. But Napoleon Hill says the most successful people on this planet, as part of their personal brands and interactions with others, give added value and service without expectation. They do it because it's the right thing to do. So if you can achieve that, and if you can add that in, even if it is just at a tiny little level, you can be adding a huge amount of value to those around you. So consider, are there things that I could do? It might not be thought leadership, it might just be the way that I do it that could add real value into the personal brand that I have. So at this point, what we're trying to do is kind of figure out how we can bring together a whole bunch of different threads and themes. We've talked about, how you look, the tone of voice, the style. We've talked about the service that you give, maybe, the skills that you have. Now, I'm a huge advocate of an ancient Japanese model, which is, we believe, around about 2,000 years ago. The Japanese coined this phrase, IKIGAI. Ikigai means iki, which is life, and gai, which is value or worth. And they have this concept called ikigai, which is about the alignment of what you love. So again, this is the things that will resonate with you on a daily basis, with what you're good at, your competencies, with what the world needs, those acts of service that we talked about, with how you'd like to be rewarded. And reward doesn't have to be financial. It can be, and that's fine, but it can be a more sort of intrinsic level of success or reward. And Ikigai is an amazingly powerful tool for spending quality time with yourself, figuring out what you love, what you're good at, what the world needs, and aligning that with how you'd like to be rewarded. And using Ikigai as a central core theme within your personal brand. Now, those four elements need to kind of sit together to be aligned. And the beauty of Ikigai is that it is a very, very simple model. It takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of effort, it takes a lot of thinking and soul searching to get it right, but it's a beautiful exercise to go through. Your Ikigai is that sweet spot at the center of those four questions. So if you love something and you're good at it, you've made a bit of a step forward. So, there will be things that you do in your life that you love, but you're not very good at, or you love them and you're good at them, but the world doesn't actually really need them, or things that you love and the world needs, but you're not very good at them, or you're doing stuff that you can be rewarded for and you're good at it, but you really don't love doing it. And I think we've all been there at some point, and you might be sat in that moment right now where, you know, you're being rewarded for something that you're really good at, and the world needs it. Everyone says, oh, that's great, but you don't really enjoy doing it. That is not your personal brand. Your personal brand, the essence of your personal brand, sits at this sweet spot between all four of those questions. And if you can figure out what you love, and if it's what the world also needs in terms of value, if you're good at it, it comes about those competencies again. And if you can also be rewarded for that, and as I say, reward isn't necessarily just financial. It can be just words of affirmation, people saying thank you for the effort that you gave, or being part of a community as a result of the service that you give. You know, there's lots of different ways of defining this, but spending time to figure out what is that sweet spot in the middle is a hugely powerful way of trying to move your personal branding forward. Now, I've got a course that is going to be, this is a shameless plug, by the way, on a course around the topic of Ikigai, which I'm going to be releasing over the next sort of few weeks. So I would invite you to connect with me on LinkedIn, and then I will be able to then sort of send you, because I will be obviously doing quite a bit of promotion and sharing of links to this course. Ikigai, from a personal and professional perspective, is such a powerful tool, but very few people have really kind of mastered how you do it. It makes logical sense, and when you hear it sort of spoken in the way I've just described it, I'm sure you understand kind of how it would fit together. But taking the steps to actually filling those boxes in can be quite a tricky process. So I'm creating an online course for Ikigai and how you can use that within your personal brand. So if you have your phone with you right now, and it might be sat next to you, just fire up your camera, scan the camera against that QR code that you can see on the screen there, and it will fire up my personal profile on LinkedIn, and then we can connect. And as soon as we've connected, then obviously I can send you at that time, when the course is live, as I say, in a couple of weeks' time, I'll send you a link to that. If you're finding yourself at a crossroads, if you're finding yourself in that kind of sort of middle ground where you're not quite sure you're on the right path, personally and particularly professionally, of course, then Ikigai is a hugely powerful tool to get you to the right point, to get you pointing in the right direction. And it's just a really great refresher if you're already on the process of knowing your personal brand, but looking to tune it, looking to kind of, you know, get it to exactly where you want it to be. So it's a really enjoyable exercise, Ikigai. So I'd love to share that course with you. So let's connect on LinkedIn. You can find me at Neil Wilkins X in LinkedIn if you search, or as I say, use that QR code that you can see on screen. We can connect directly. So let's assume then that you've done some exercises, you've done a little bit of soul searching, you've kind of got to a point now where you sort of, you know, got a bit of an idea as to the direction going forward. So you've kind of figured out the things that you enjoy, you know, sort of how you're going to be serving, or at least the starting point of how you're going to be serving others, and you kind of got a bit of a plan together. Well, of course, as we said right at the start of this webinar, one of the key things that we have to understand is that we've already got some kind of personal profile out there. Our brand is already existing. So the chances are we need to go on a journey from here to where we're looking to get to. And I will call this the evolution of your personal brand, the evolution timeline. So we need to start plotting out a timeline. Now, if you're not a very planful person, this is probably going to sound like, oh goodness, here we go, big project management thing, haven't got time for that. It can be that if that is the way that you're inclined, but if you like kind of planning light, and you would much rather be in a position where you can just sort of think, okay, I kind of understand how I'm coming across to others right now, but I want to take real control of this, I want to take charge of this, but I want to do it in a light, comfortable, easy to digest kind of way, then I would suggest really the idea of using a sort of a mood board, if you like, or a process of images to define the timeline going forward. Now, here's mine. Okay, so I'm just going to openly share kind of the journey that I'm on. So I'm on a personal brand evolution, if we can call it that, from being for over many, many years, in fact, many decades, a marketer. Okay, normal run-of-the-mill marketer, been in lots of industries and lots of marketing stuff, taught marketing, all these kinds of things, loved it, absolutely loved it, been living and breathing it. But I got to a point where I felt, okay, I need something a little bit different. You might say it's a little bit more, but it's just a little bit different. I found myself being drawn to, as I said a little bit earlier, things about sustainability, things about the environment, and actually looking at creating more sustainable business marketing, if you like. And so I'm kind of morphing myself and evolving myself on my journey of my personal brand towards the position of being a mindful marketer, whatever that means. Doesn't really matter what that means. I'm defining it as I go. Okay, so the whole thing about conscious marketing, conscious and sustainable marketing. So I'm kind of leaving behind a lot of the traditional tools and actually now trying to kind of forge ahead really with a lot of study, a lot of looking and sort of soul searching around sort of thought leadership topics around this whole kind of sort of mindful and conscious sort of business practice and business approaches. So I've kind of sort of almost reinvented, if you like, my personal brand and the way that I sort of convey and the tone of voice and the style. So I'm talking about slightly different things now. And my evolution, this is my goal over the coming sort of months and years, is to not necessarily drop the marketer, because I am a marketer, I'm a communicator through and through, it's kind of what I do, but actually moving more into an holistic kind of mindful living specialist. So actually supporting individuals and people on their mindful marketing, mindful communication, mindful living journey. So taking some of the best bits that I found from my past, using those as core competencies and kind of reinventing the offer, if you like, in terms of a more holistic, very people-centric and people-focused rather than purely business-focused angle. So I'm taking a lot of the P in the marketing mix, if you like, but the P for people, I'm taking that into the mindful living specialism that I'm looking to do. And the only way I'm doing this, I'm not over planning it, I'm just using images of me to convey that story as little reminders of me in terms of my journey and the way that I'm moving from formal corporate marketer to a mindful living specialist. So that's me kind of sharing, heart on the sleeve, sharing my journey. But I think even if you're not willing to do that from your own personal perspective yet, in a public sense, you might need to do a little bit of work before you'd be happy doing that. Actually creating a mood board or an image board of that kind of that transition or that lifestyle change and journey is a really emotive and powerful thing to do. Because as we said, this is something you need to be comfortable, you're happy living and breathing on an ongoing basis into the future. So if it doesn't look and feel right, no amount of words and no amount of research is going to convince you it's going to work. So it's got to feel right. So this is all about balancing head and heart as you go forward. So of course it's going to look good, it's going to sound good, and it's going to feel really good going forward. And of course, if you can embrace and share that, this is part of that whole documenting of the journey that we talked about before. And people are curious and people are interested because the clue is in the word social in social media. People want to engage socially with you. So therefore, you can start to evolve your personal brand using social media by sharing little snippets of your journey. Always transparent, always authentic, always honest and true, because people will spot this if you're trying to fake it, remember? So this is all about embracing and sharing the professional extrovert elements of your journey. You can retain some of the personal stuff, that is totally fine, but just remembering that people are curious and interested in the journey that you're actually on. So feel free to share what it is that you feel is important. And you will find the more that you share, the more people say, that's really interesting. Can we talk about that? Because I've been thinking this or this. And people will come in and give you support and they'll give you guidance. And the more that you share, the more that you build the momentum of this new personal brand, you will be amazed how much new stuff arrives. And you think, my goodness, if I hadn't mentioned that, that would never have happened. It's fascinating how that happens. I think the phrase is that the universe has got your back. If you haven't heard that, go and Google it, because there's a lot of kind of thinking and research and science behind this to show that it really, really does work. So how are we actually going to put this out there? Well, of course, if you start to then believe that this journey is going to need to kind of manifest in the real world, so in other words, it's going to be, yes, when you talk to people face to face, but also really importantly, this digital footprint that we've been talking about, you're going to need to link up your various social media profiles. They've got to look and sound consistent and right. If you're blogging, because of course, if you're a thought leader or you've got these topics that you want to start sharing about, you need to be producing content. You need to be reviewing stuff. You need to be coming up with some really good stuff. You might decide that actually the written word isn't my way forward, my preferred approach. I want to vlog this stuff. So get yourself a YouTube channel. Again, huge benefit in your footprint of having a YouTube channel, and other vlog platforms obviously are available. Right here, right now, the biggest percentage growth is coming through audio. I've sort of talked about this many times. If you've listened to any of my other sort of webinars or follow my podcast, you will know I'm a huge advocate of podcasting. Think about it. It's a very easy thing to do. Right here, right now, I've got my phone recording a voice memo of my talk here on this webinar, and that's going to be going out on my podcast. It really is that easy. There's no excuse. You can't say that it's too technical or that, oh, I'm not technical, I haven't got the time. Just by talking and recording on a voice memo, you've got yourself a podcast. So by sharing all of this content seamlessly across all of your channels, and of course, if you've got a website, and if you haven't got a website and you want to build a personal brand that you've got control of, now is the time to do it. Lots of very sort of effective free sites are available if you want to go to the next level up. Get a WordPress site with a nice design theme that's in the tone of voice and style that you want. Loads and loads of flexibility here. Have fun with this stuff. Linking all of this content together should be a really enjoyable exercise. It shouldn't be something that feels onerous. If you've been through all of the stuff that we've covered so far, you're probably going to have a hunger and a thirst for creating this stuff. So really embrace it wherever you can. And of course, always having, because we're marketers and communicators, we've always got to have one eye and one ear on the customer. Think about the audiences that you have and the people that you need to get on side. Maybe you need some support from certain people to deliver this personal brand or to get that next great job. So you're starting to align the things that you're creating with the right kinds of audiences. Stakeholder management, as we call it in marketing, is critical here. Think of who your stakeholders are. Who's going to support you? Who's going to offer you that next great job? Who's going to be your mentor or your coach? Who are going to be your next work colleagues? What communities do you want to engage with? Find out where they are so you can balance the right social media for the right audiences, and then make sure you're tuning your messages, again, within the style and the limitations and the guidelines of your personal brand guidelines again here, but from your personal perspective, so that you can align and tune all this stuff so it really sits comfortably together. This alignment and balance is what this is really all about. And you will find that by doing that, you're starting to carefully plot a journey for these audiences. Some of the platforms, the Facebooks, the Twitters and the LinkedIns of this world give you a really nice ability to be able to have multiple links on the bios or your profiles. Places like Instagram, a little bit more limited, but there are tools available. Right here, right now, a lot of us are going to be using Instagram as a starting platform or as a hub for our social networking activity. But there is a limitation when we want to actually be signposting to all the great content we're posting. There's often a limitation because you can only have a single link. But there are services out there which aggregate all of your places, all of your content together into one single link. The one I particularly like right now is free. There is a pro version available, is Linktree. If you go to linktr.ee, you will see it, or you can download the app on Android or your iPhone, and you can set up a simple little Linktree account, probably using your name, and then put in links to your website, podcast, and your various social media accounts, all from one single link. So it's one more step, but it allows you to plot the journey. So much as we would plot a customer journey for our customers, make sure you're thinking really consciously about who you're looking to communicate with. Your personal brand shouldn't be this sort of diluted, sort of generic thing. It needs to be targeted. So think about who you're communicating with and get together some of the tools that can help you to link these social networks and websites and podcasts together to make you easy to find, but then also easy to navigate as a personal brand. So I want to round off now, because we've obviously got a load of different things that we've got sort of in here as ideas and as concepts. I want to round off with 3 key steps to take this forward. Hopefully you've been sort of taking lots of notes, and if not, you can watch on catch up and go back and sort of listen again and sort of make the notes and sort of give yourself some really, really good quality time to reflect and think about this stuff. So the 3 sort of next steps I'd recommend is that when you're thinking about telling your story within your personal brand, is use the rule of thirds. You'll know, if you've ever encountered me before, I'm a huge advocate of my sort of rule of thirds, which is that 1/3 of everything that you talk about should be getting to know you. So 1/3 is personal. And that's getting to know you personally. 1/3 is pointing, so that's signposting to relevant, interesting stuff that supports your personal brand but adds value to your target audience. Again, you would do this as part of your work if you're sort of branding your products and services or your business, so do it for you as well. That nice balance between getting to know you and then adding value by signposting relevant stuff from elsewhere is a great way of building your personal brand, which allows you then to do the other third, which is actually selling your proposition and value. So if you're after something, if you're looking for support, if you're selling something, if you're looking for business, if you're looking for a new job, you can do that absolutely fine within your personal brand, as long as you balanced it with the other 2/3. Otherwise, it looks like you're seeking and asking without giving value back. The rule of thirds just allows you to build this lovely balanced approach to the way that your brand is going to be perceived by everybody who actually encounters it. If you need more details about the rule of thirds, you can search my book on Amazon. It's literally called Rule of Thirds. And if you just type Rule of Thirds, Neil Wilkins, you'll find it in there. Next step 2 is, again, building on that thought leadership idea, is being recognized for key phrases. Okay, so think when you're going through that, what do I want to be identified with? What kind of sort of storytelling have I got? You know, what kind of alignment do I want in subjects and topics out there in the big wide world? Is be recognized for key phrases and include these phrases, hashtags particularly, obviously most social networks accept these now. Identify which hashtags you want to be consistently using. So for me, it's hashtag mindful marketing. I'm also now introducing hashtag mindful living. So obviously I'm not the only person who does that, far from it. There are millions of people who will be doing this. But if you consistently use these key phrases and key hashtags, over time, you'll start to build this footprint aligned with those topics and those stories. So when people are searching for that or they encounter that topic, you are there as an influencer. It might be influencer with a small I at the start, but potentially, depending on the topic, and particularly if it's a very niche topic that's a core competency that you love and is part of your personal brand, this is the way influencers build their presence. Okay, so think about that. What key phrases do you want to be associated with? And you can use domain or web address shortcode services like Bitly to actually recloak and sort of cover over a lot of the content that you create. So if you are looking to align yourself with particular topics, you can shortcode a descriptive style, if you like, of a particular blog address to allow yourself to kind of share topics that really do what they say on the tin, so that the stuff that you're sharing makes total sense to those who encounter it. So again, a little bit of time, a little bit of reflection. What do I want to be associated with? What am I aligning my personal brand with in terms of topics out there in the big wide world? And of course, next step 3 is very much use the power of IKIGAI. If you do a Google search for IKIGAI between now and my lovely launch, my lovely course, you will find, if you do Google search IKIGAI and look on the images tab, you'll see lots of visuals for that IKIGAI model. Just try and live and breathe something that you love, that you're good at, that the world needs, that you can be rewarded for. If you can find and identify the thing that sits at the center of that set of 4 questions, then that is your perfect sweet spot. That is your purpose. That is your brand going forward. So that's hugely, hugely powerful. And so those would be my key 3 topics, the key 3 things that I would suggest that you do. And of course, then in the next webinar, we're going to be able to bring all of those together in an example of a very specific social network, which is LinkedIn, because taking your personal brand into LinkedIn right here, right now, is a really, really powerful way of both storytelling, but also getting the conversation going. Personal branding is not one way, it's not a monologue. It's all part of choreographing a conversation with those in the world around you. So hugely powerful. On the 12th of April, I'll show you how we're going to extend the work that hopefully by that point you will have done, sort of considering your personal brand, taking that forward into an example social network, so that we're able to talk about that in a really sort of conscious way and actually evolve your LinkedIn profile in a way that really adds value both to you, but also to the world around you. And of course, to book onto that one, as I said before, if you go to marketingcollege.com/events, you will then be able to be part of that one as well. So thank you very much for listening. We've got a little bit of a Q&A, I think. I think Lauren from the college is going to sort of pop into the call now and share some of the questions I think that have been coming up. If you do have any questions, use the Q&A facility here on the webinar to post any questions. I'll endeavour to answer. If I don't know the actual answer to the question, then I will endeavour to yes, obviously provide a link or DM you sort of afterwards. But do remember, connect with me on LinkedIn, and obviously we can have a conversation there as well on this topic, and also give me a chance to share with you more details about that IKIGAI course.
Thank you, Neil. The first question we've got is from Shannon, and she asks, with putting across your personal brand, is it better to be 100% authentic, faults and all, or sell yourself and try to portray and live the best version of yourself, both professionally and personally?
That's just a lovely question. Absolutely love it. I would say it comes back to that personal privacy point. I think as far as you can push it in terms of letting go of privacy, the more the world will respond to you. It's a really interesting thing, becoming vulnerable. There's a lot of research and science behind this concept of becoming vulnerable and actually the value it brings to the world. People love vulnerability. I think in the old days, vulnerability was seen as a weakness. It's now being seen as a really, really strong skill and strength. So I think the more you can appear and be authentically vulnerable, the more the world will identify with you, will sympathize with you, but will also actually recognize that you are this real authentic being that they want to be part of, and actually be, have in their world. So I think, the more you can, and it might be a bit of a journey. I think for some people, just jumping straight into being vulnerable or straight into being completely transparent probably is a step too far. But if you can build that into your journey, I think the further you can push that, the better. Back in the day, I wouldn't have even told you what my journey was. Being a really strong, introvert, it would have been something I would have much rather kept private to myself. But I've seen the value, I've seen how people respond, and people love that vulnerability piece. It is definitely a strength. So I'd say, yeah, the more you can, faults and all, the more you can do that, the better.
Okay, lovely, thank you. The next question from Jill is, what is the balance on time spent on building your own brand? As a busy senior marketer, my time is taken up on the brands I work on and supporting the team members on their profiles rather than on myself. How do you emerge from the traditional role of very much behind the scenes?
That is a lovely question. Thank you very much, Jill, for raising that one. It's a really key thing, and I think certainly as we come out of what has been, well, it is the most chaotic and uncertain year probably ever for any of us, really. I think what we're looking to do is probably make best value of time. I think time is one of those things that if you decide you're going to invest your time, it puts a whole different kind of mindset around how you're going to get some value from it versus spending your time. I think, you know, spending time implies it's a bit of a cost, and actually it's a negative. Whereas actually, if we invest our time, it means we're going to get a good return from it. So I would say that probably this kind of personal branding exercise is probably a great investment of some of your personal time. So if you decide you might want to go for a slightly longer walk, for example, maybe of an evening or maybe early morning, take a little bit of time out for yourself. I don't think necessarily, unless you're in a particular role and have a particular type of personal brand that's already some way down the track of being planned out, I don't think necessarily it's going to be something you can do within a busy schedule. I think this is all about making a conscious effort to invest your own time in this. It is a hugely enjoyable thing. I mean, what's not to like? Spending time reflecting on yourself. You know, as human beings, you know, we probably don't do enough of this. Well, we don't collectively. So I think if you can spend more time maybe on the beach when we're allowed to, maybe walking, even if it's, you know, just literally around the block, even if it is, you know, just sort of sitting at home quietly with a cup of tea or, you know, a good book, and then putting the book down and thinking, right, I'm just going to spend some time thinking about me and actually what I want to get to, and use the IKIGAI process. It is, once you get into it and you've invested a little bit of attention to it, you'll find that you really get swept along by it. I wouldn't necessarily say any late nights doing it, but probably early mornings are quite a good sort of productive time. But I do totally appreciate, Jill, your comment about, you know, getting swept along by, you know, the chaos and the noise right now. And I think this is all about consciously investing some personal time. But I will very, very, very confidently say the return that you'll get on that investment of time will be well worth it. But think of it as an investment, not as a cost. And I think that's probably the best way to sort of at least get your head in the right sort of shape to start with anyway.
Great, thank you. Dipali asks, could you please provide things to keep in mind in terms of developing personal brand when starting a new role?
Yeah, that's an interesting one, and particularly if, you know, you're already on this kind of transition, and it might be that you're being asked to do different things now if you're in a different role. I think one of the key things, and I kind of just touched on it very briefly at the end of the webinar there, was this whole idea that it's very much a conversation. So your personal brand is something that you can begin and you can choreograph, and you can, with the best will in the world, you can start to shape, but it only really takes effect when you listen to others. And I think there's a lovely thing about starting a new role, because the chances are you're going to be encountering new people. And this is potentially a fresh start. It might be within the same organization, or it could be a completely different organization. And so I think actually listening to, and it isn't just verbally listening, it's actually watching people's reactions when you do things in maybe a slightly different way, or maybe when you say things in a slightly different way, or maybe when you add an extra little bit of value through the service that you give in a slightly different way. It's watching people's reactions. It's just being very mindful and present in the moment. And it is testing. This is not manipulating. This is all about just being very conscious and very present. And I think certainly starting a new role gives you that opportunity to properly listen, because, you know, very, very few of us really listen properly. You know, it's a very deep human skill that, you know, a lot of us have lost because we've been so busy. But I think starting in a new role gives you that lovely, you know, fresh new chance. And it might even give you, just as you go through the induction process into that new role, just gives you that little bit of extra space to do that and see what happens, see how people react to you. Make notes of it, because otherwise you will forget. So journal the process, and then see how that then contributes to kind of where you want to take this in the future.
I think I can probably answer the last ones. There's a few of you that are asking about getting recordings for all of the sessions. So what will happen is you'll receive an email after this with a recording of this one on that you can listen to whenever you like. And what I'll do is also include links to both of Neil's past sessions as well. So the key marketing skills and your marketing CV. So you don't need to worry about trying to gain access to those. It'll all be included in the one email. We've got one more, I think. Oh, not a question, just lots of nice feedback. I only just discovered this
Oh, thank
webinar
you,
and it's
everybody.
been
Appreciate that.
fantastic.
There's some lovely feedback.
Yeah, great session and very useful session. So yeah, really enjoyed
No,
this
that's great.
webinar.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Lauren, as well, because it's been lovely having that little Q&A at the end there, because it's just nice to get some real life context around it as well. So hopefully that'll be something we can add into the personal branding on LinkedIn one on the 12th of April as well.
Definitely, yeah, definitely. Thank you so much for putting together the session for us. I've made lots of notes, so I'm sure everybody else has.
No, that's brilliant. And as I say, do connect if you're still listening to the session. Do connect with me on LinkedIn. Be great in advance of the personal branding on LinkedIn webinar. But also, if you do have any questions, feel free to DM me on LinkedIn. And yeah, I shall see you over there as well. And again, see you on the 12th of April, everyone.